Rumours 2024. I saw this yesterday. It's a comedy, horror, kind of drama. It's based on the G7, the group of 7 countries with the top economics, or at least in the West, representing the West. So the most powerful countries that um, um, represent the West. And for a while, actually, there was the G8, and that included Russia, but the Ukraine war and I think Crimea put paid to that. So most of the time, it's been the Group of Seven, the G7. And um, at the start, there's this sort of photo call. Um, Kate Blanchett plays Hilda, who's Chancellor of Germany. There's Roy Dupuy, Maxime, the Prime Minister of Canada. There's Denis Menashe, who plays Sylvain, the President of France. There's Nikki Amuka-Bird, who plays Cardoza, who is the Prime Minister of the UK. There's Charles Dance playing Edison, who is the President of the USA, and Rolando Ravello playing the Prime Minister of Italy. And there are a few other. Oh yeah, Japan. Takahiro Hiro, who plays Tatsuro, who's the Prime Minister of Japan. So there's the European Council, Jonas Glob, there's Vikander. Alicia Vikander's great actress. Seen in so many films over the years. Love her. Well, like Kate Blanchett and a few of the other. Who else? Probably she's the main other character that I know from other films, and she's awesome. But Alicia plays Celestine, who's the president of the European Council. And she's more as in she's got a more minor role, it seems. The others, you get to see them from the start. They all convene for photo call. They stand in a line, not 2 meters apart, not quite COVID, but in a similar stance in some ways. It reminds me of how it was in 2020. And it's a G7 summit at Dankerode in Germany. And so I noticed, first of all, it's got a 76 tomato rating, which is pretty good, but no score on IMDb because it's, I guess, very, very recently released. And these world leaders have met up to discuss a crisis, and they're going to write a paper to provide clarity. And I thought, when I heard that word, oh my, where have I recently heard that weasel word? Well, I'm not going to say. But politicians. So I was going to say, yeah. So they have the photo op, and there's all these attaches and political aides all bustling around them, and the few other peripherals apart from the G7, they're all around, but they are going for working lunch. Just the 7 of them, so they walk across the gardens. They're talking about this working lunch because they have to issue a statement on how they plan to deal with this large crisis. And while they're walking across sort of parkland or some meadows or some sort of open grassland. They come across an excavation. This archaeologist sampling, and they peer into the hole, and it's an example of a bog person, someone who died often centuries ago, could be as far back as the Mesolithic, but I've looked it up even as recently as the Second World War. So often people who've died in gruesome circumstances, and the example in question, they talk about it and they have slightly differing reactions. Like the UK Prime Minister compared to the German Chancellor, and it is and you know it is quite amusing. I thought there's a lot of amusement in this film, but it's pretty bleak. It's pretty dark. Um, so the Bog People, yeah, I did look a bit about it because the skin and the organs can be preserved, and the peat is acidic, so it can dissolve the bones. So it kind of leaves them in a little curved sort of. They look um, kind of quite different, slightly creepy. These because they don't really look that human because um, their bones have been dissolved. But there's this special chemistry that applies in the bogs, and oh gosh, they still managed to work out, or they say they worked out the gender of the person in this case. And I was thinking about that old trope about how uh, people uh, mock or say nasty things about trans people because, oh, you get dug up in hundreds of years' time and they'll be able to tell things. But actually, they'll be able to tell your assigned gender at birth or your chromosomal sex or something. But the one thing about it actually is if the skin and organs are preserved, and there could be a lot of evidence, there is often a lot of evidence in certain circumstances when people have died that actually shows that uh, trans people existed centuries ago, thousands of years ago, millennia ago, in certain circumstances. So that's what might happen. It might be proof of our persistence throughout history. So, um, examples of transness do exist throughout the ages and in many indigenous cultures. I mean, it seems like the West is one of the main areas that has a pushback. Many other cultures are a lot more uh, sophisticated and thoughtful and actually wise to the real situation. So anyway, back to this story. There's the G7. They split up into groups of two and three, um, and they're going to talk about certain aspects and their particular drafts that they'll put together. So it is a bit like going into plenaries and then coming back as a syndicate. Break up groups, breakout groups, and then joining together to synergize. Um, but Canada has had a bit of more um, difficulty, and this Maxime Roy Dupuis character, things aren't going too well. He's perhaps had relationship trouble. He might be stepping down. That's the rumor, and as the others put it, he's feeling the burden of leadership. And it's just like there's some amusement and there's some sinister stuff going on, but you think, so what exactly is happening here? I mean, he's a bit macho in some respects, and he does seem to fancy some of the women leaders, and there's all this sort of historical stuff that keeps coming up and being pushed back. You think, yeah, oh dear. And of course, the circumstances are very different from real life politics of today, but there's those parallels if you just mix up the characters. Considering some of the themes that come up in this film, um, there's yeah, another thing about Canada's, Maxime, he's got neat, tied up ponytail hair, but a bit later on, it's all straggly, it's down. His ears definitely having some trouble. Um, and a few of the others are having trouble. I mean, one of the characters loses some papers that blow away in the wind, and he chases after them. He actually falls into one of the, uh, peat bogs, the excavations, and there's this sort of zombie apocalypse element to this film. There's some suggestion that they may attack or they may not, but they seem to come alive a bit at least, and so there's that worry. There's this large brain as well. There's some strange stories. There's a AI being used that's sending messages. It's actually uncovering a sinister modern crime and implicating possibly um, a leader. Let's say that without saying much, but considering all the current news, things aren't that different. You just again have to mix up the countries. Um, wow, it's you know it's out in the wilds, this place, and I thought, oh right, it's kind of like it's a stately home, but then they say oh, it's like 20 kilometers to civilization, to the next to the main road, and they've got this ferry to cross and all sorts of things like that. So whether they escape, and then this uh, uh, Celestine's um, what she says about the brain, and apparently, yeah, it's like a woman's brain, and there's all this sort of like understated subtext, but it's not that clear what. Not really that clear. Maybe I was tired last night when I watched this, but there's little elements that are gruesome, and there's a sense of tension because you're wondering what exactly is going to happen. Um, I'm going to score this like 8 out of 10 because it it is amusing. It's quite thought provoking, and it does seem to cover. It is like an analogy for um, like an analogous example of what might be happening in G7 conferences. Maybe not now, but they sort of talk about past ones as well, and it's just like, yeah, it's sort of not far. I find it plausible. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a great insight into G7 working, but it was a pretty fun romp. Um, so that's my score, 8 out of 10, 8.0. Uh, I'd love to know what you think. Please like if you like this review. Thanks if you subscribe. Please hit the notification button. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.